Are you struggling to keep up with endless spreadsheets and manual tasks? Are you working 60, 70, or even 80 hours a week in your finance job? Well, what if I told you there's a way to reclaim your time and boost your productivity with just a few simple Excel tricks? The best part? All the tools are free and already built right into your computer. From recording macros to using ChatGPT to write code, I'm breaking down 5 automation hacks that'll take you from overwhelmed to unstoppable. Get ready to turn hours into minutes. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. Welcome to the channel. I'm Mike, and if you're new here, I'm a senior finance leader, and over the last decade, I've spent more than 15,000 hours working in Excel. And today, I want to bring some of my learnings to you, especially around automation, to help you save time and succeed at work. Whether you want time to focus on more important strategic projects, whether you want to be able to impress your boss, or if you just want to be able to get to Taco Tuesday faster, these hacks will save you hours. I guarantee it. Be sure to stick around to the end for a really cool bonus tip that I'm going to toss in. Everyone I show it to has absolutely loved it. What do I mean by automation? Simply put, it's making your computer do the work for you. It doesn't mean coding. It doesn't mean fancy software, and it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. Again, it just means getting a computer to do work that you would otherwise have to do manually. There's a lot of Excel tasks that are really ripe for automation. This includes repeating tasks like copying and pasting formulas or formatting large amounts of data. It could be dealing with errors caused by human input or even formula mistakes, analyzing large data sets without getting overwhelmed by the amount of data and the comparisons you have to look through, and creating visually appealing reports that are easy to understand and share with others. Have any questions so far? Go ahead and drop them in the comments. I read and respond to every single one, and I'm more than happy to help you out. So with that, let's get started on taming messy data in Excel using Power Query. So what is Power Query? Power Query is an incredibly powerful tool to manage data that's built right into the Excel you already have. You may have not even noticed it hiding right there on the Data tab in plain sight. There's so many great functions of Power Query. The first is data importation. You can pull in data from multiple different kinds of sources across your computer, across databases, and across the web. You can then transform this data once it's in. You can do things like remove duplicates, you can shift columns around, you can change the type of value, text to number, all kinds of powerful tools. There's data integration. You can take multiple data sets and merge them together, similar to how you would do it in like a SQL query or an Access database. You can also append data together to make larger data sets. A really fantastic feature is that there's automated and repeatable workflows. This means that once you teach Power Query how to handle a data set, it will be able to run those steps with a fresh data set every single time without any intervention from you. There's advanced data shaping. This goes beyond transformation to allow you to group things together, to do pivots, to unpivot, to repivot, to do all kinds of really complex data analysis right in Excel. There's M-code scripting. If you want to be really fancy, Power Query uses a language to code called M, and you're able to do M-codes right in the Power Query window to do really complex things with it beyond what even the user interface will let you do. To that point, there's a very user-friendly interface. Unlike a lot of tools like straight coding in SQL or Python, Power Query looks and acts just like Excel, and you'll be used to it right off the bat. And performance. Power Query can handle data so much faster than Excel, and it is incredible at handling large data sets. And the best thing is it does all this work before it pulls the data in, so it doesn't slow down your Excel and it doesn't slow down your computer nearly as much. So now let's hop over to Excel and start walking through how to use Power Query to transform data. So I've got an Excel spreadsheet open here, and I'm on the Data tab right up here. And as I mentioned, Power Query is hanging out right in plain sight in your Excel that you already have. It's this section over here called Get and Transform Data. If you haven't worked with Power Query, you may have never even noticed this. So to get started, we're going to go to Get Data, and we're going to get data from a file. So I've got a couple of files that I got from Kaggle. Kaggle is a great resource for data science and machine learning. There are tens of thousands of free data sets you can work with to practice your skills. I highly recommend it, totally free. Download away and practice. So first I've got a CSV file, which I got from Kaggle. This is going to be a big database of retail sales. It is absolutely massive. It's over 300,000 lines. and it is nothing you would want to pull in directly to your worksheet. So here's how we open up in Power Query. So you'll see this window, and it's showing you a highlight of this is the data we found, and this is what we're going to pull in. I don't want to load it yet because what I want to do is take this into Power Query. If I hit load, it would pull it straight into Excel. What I want to do is hit this transform data button, and that's going to open up the Power Query window for me. So now we're in the Power Query window. Let me orient you to what we're seeing here. So there's three main columns you need to know. There's Home, there's Transform, and there's Add Column. So in Home, this is where you can do a lot of the basic data management. You can do things like choosing columns, you can keep rows, remove rows, you can do some grouping, you can change the data type, and as we'll look at in a bit, you can merge or append queries right here to adjust your data. On the Transform column, some of the same functions from the first one. You'll still, group is still here. You can do a lot of work with detecting the type. You can pivot, so you can pivot in or out of a pivot table. You can take specific columns, you can put them up, very useful there. You can do math in here, so a lot of times we like to do our reports in thousands or millions instead of whole values, and you can do all of that math right here and apply that to a column. And then of course, if you go to add column, you can, just like in a pivot table, you can pull in additional columns, you can create calculations. So if I custom column, it would allow me to do this window and just put it in. I will note that the formulas are different in Power Query. We're not going to cover that in full today, but if you go down to learn about Power Query formulas, Microsoft has some great resources right here for you. So now that we've looked at the functionality available in Power Query, let's start working with this data set so we can get it into Excel where we need it. You see, this is again a massive data set. There's over 300,000 rows. They won't all load in here because Power Query is trying to make sure you can work with the data in the fastest and most efficient way possible. So the very first thing we're going to do is we want to select Power Query, and we want to remove anything that's blank because there could be some data in here that is incomplete. So we're going to go down here, we're going to go to remove rows, and we're going to remove blank rows. So now you'll see over here under query settings, when I did that, it added a step. This is the power of being able to save and rerun your Power Query because it's going to save everything I do. And if you ever need to update this, you can connect to a new data set and it will run all of the steps you've set. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to pull in a mapping table. Okay, so this is very similar to how we would use VLOOKUP, except it's a lot more powerful because it will give you the data set already looked up. So here's how we're going to do this. So first of all, I want to go to a new query and I want to add a new source. I have this saved as an Excel workbook. So we're going to go here, we have this mapping table, and I'm going to pull that in the same way that I pulled in the raw data set. In this scenario, let's say that we're a salesperson, we have some key accounts across the business, and we only want to look at the data for the key accounts. So you'll see as an example, clothing Nike is a key account. This is really important. You'll notice that it did not pull in the headers. So I'm going to come up here, and there's this button to say use first row as headers. I'm going to click that, and it's going to pop it right up for me. And you'll see it's also, again, tracking the steps over here because it can track across multiple data sources, all of the different things you want to do. So now I've got the key accounts. You'll see this is organized. I've got the category and the vendor. Going back to retail data, I don't have a field that's category and vendor, right? I have a field that is the category and I have a field that is the vendor, but I don't have those together. So to merge this together, I need a column that matches. So I'm going to add a new column that will let me do that. So now what we need to do is add a column. So I'm going to go to custom column and I'm going to create a concatenate function very similar to what I would do in Excel. So what I need to combine together is this product category over here with product brand right here. And again, the formulas are a little bit different. So we're going to go equals product category. We're going to do an and. You put in a space with using quotes, just like you would do in Excel. We'll do another and then we will select product brand. Hit OK, and look at that. There's a column that we can now merge. So now how do we merge? We're going to go back to home and we're going to click this merge queries button. I'm going to merge queries, just merge queries. If I do new, it'll create a totally new query. I just want to add my mapping table into this existing file I'm working with. So we'll hit merge queries. Now you select the column that is the same between the two that you want to match. So I'm going to come over to my new custom column. I'm going to select the mapping table. I'm going to select the one that matches. I'm going to do a left outer. This means that I'm going to keep all of the rows from the retail data set. Whatever is on top here is considered left. Whatever's on the bottom is considered right. And I don't want to use fuzzy matching because I know that these data sets match. Fuzzy matching will allow you to look kind of how VLOOKUP at 1 or -1, where it will look for something close. Fuzzy matching does the same thing. So we'll hit OK, and it's going to pull it in. Now you'll notice when it first pulls it in, it just says table. So we need to go over and expand this. I already have category vendor in. That's what I used to match. I just want to open key account. We'll hit OK. And now we've just pulled in the data set. You'll see some of them are marked key account if they are a key account. Otherwise, it just says null. This will become very important for our next step. So now that we've mapped the key accounts, we're going to go through and filter out everything that's not a key account because we don't need it in the data set. This is as easy as clicking the drop down, unchecking null, and the data set is filtered just to key accounts. Now, to that same point, I don't need all of these columns in here for what I'm going to do. I really want to know the name of my customers, where they're from, and what they purchased and how much they purchased it for. I don't need all of these individual columns when I load it into Excel to work with it. So to do that, we go to Group By. And in here, I always use the Advanced because it allows me to pull in multiple columns. So I'm going to go in Advanced, and I'm going to go through and select which columns do I want. I don't need any of the IDs. I really want their name. I want their email so I can send them an email. I don't need a lot of the demographic information. I do want to know the total amount of their purchase. And then I want to know what types of products they bought. And that's really all I need to know. I don't need all of this other data in here. All right, then we're going to come down here. We're going to create a new value column. We want the operation to be a sum, and it is going to be a sum of total amount. Which reminds me, you don't want to put the value field up here. We want to only put the value fields down here. This just needs to be all of the different text and descriptive fields. So with that, we will hit OK, and we will let Power Query do its magic. So you'll see this cycle for a little bit, and then we'll have a brand new data set where everything is grouped together, much smaller, much more manageable with just what we selected, and Power Query has automatically summed everything for us. And again, if you get a new customer data set and you want to rerun this, Power Query has saved all of your steps over here under applied steps. If you ever want to go back and adjust a step, we'll look at filtered rows, for instance. And we previously did just key account. This is where you can come back and you can make any changes you want. Just hit the gear icon next to any of your steps. You can edit them without having to go back and recreate the entire wheel. So now that we have our data set, we want to load it. There's a couple of different options. You come up to Close and Load To, and there's a few things you can do. So if you want to work with Power Pivot, which I will cover in a different video, make sure to check Add this data to the data model. This creates an offline database that Power Pivot can pull from, just like you would normally pivot off of an Excel spreadsheet table. You can do this off of a Power Pivot data model, so make sure to check that. Now, if you want to keep your Excel workbook really light and you're not emailing the file to anybody, I recommend selecting Only Create Connection. This will query the data sets every time that you want to work with Power Query or work with the data in Power Pivot. It will not load it to your workbook. It keeps it a lot smaller and more agile. Now, of course, if you're going to have to email this out to anybody, let's assume we need to email this to the sales team, you will want to load it to your workbook. Otherwise, they won't be able to see or access the data. So in this case, we're going to click Table. We're going to hit OK, and our brand new data set is going to load. You'll see over here on the right, the Queries and Connections pane. This is part of Power Query and Power Pivot. It's currently querying the data. It's pulling it all in for us, and it's setting it up. So you'll see Power Query pulled in all of our data. Here we have the mapping table that pulled in for your reference of what is or is not a key account. And here's our new retail data. Now you'll remember that originally I said this was over 300,000 lines. With all of the data transformation we've applied, it's down to just over 100,000. And most importantly, instead of being 30 columns across, it's now 6 columns across. A lot easier to manage. And then from here, you would do the normal steps. You could turn this into a pivot table, insert pivot table. Let's pop this on sheet 1 because we already have it. And then you could pull it in just like you normally would. Right, so I'm going to just put in the names. I'm going to say for product categories, I really just want clothing. Here's everyone who bought from me, and here's how much they spent. All there, ready to go, because you've created this very concise, very clean data set. Don't forget that Power Query will always save your steps, and it will always save your original data set. So if something isn't quite right, you can go back to Power Query, change the steps, it will reference the original data set, and it will give you a new output. And now I promised you a bonus tip, and this is truly life-changing. Power Query can't just pull from databases or Excel. It can also pull from PDFs, pull the text right out of them, and it can pull from the web. So I'm going to use an example. Let's say for this sales business, we want to look at how Walmart is performing because Walmart's our biggest competitor. So we're going to go back to Power Query. Remember, we go to the Data tab, Get Data, and we're going to get data from a PDF. It's just right here. All right, and I have the earnings release for Walmart saved down. I'm going to import that. And now Power Query is going to go through and it's going to scan the entire PDF for us. So the way this works is it's by page. So what I want to do is I want to come down and look for the page that has their financial performance. So here it is. So here's their financial performance for the last 3 months ended. I'm going to hit Transform Data, because what I want to do here is clean this up a little bit and pull out some of the noise. Right, so there's these null columns I want to remove. So I'm going to remove this column. I'm going to remove this column. We're going to clean this up. Okay, and there's our data set. So this now is exactly what Walmart made, pulled into Excel. I'm going to hit Close and Load. I want to add it to the data model. I also want to add a new worksheet. And now I've got Walmart's performance, and I can quickly compare that right over, came out of a PDF into Excel. This is an incredible feature, especially if you look at stocks where all of the major companies are releasing usually in PDFs, and only a few nice ones that, like us, give us Excel files. If these Excel hacks are getting you excited about how much time you're going to save, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I post new videos like this every single Monday, and I don't want you to miss a thing. If you haven't heard of it, what is a macro? Macros are small scripts that can automate tasks in Excel using a programming language called Visual Basic. Macros are small scripts that automate tasks in Excel. They can do essentially anything in Excel that you could do by clicking a button or inputting a short key, except it will do it automated, just like magic. Here's some of the benefits of macros. You can save time, you can reduce errors, and most importantly, you can improve efficiency because you can do all of the same work in a fraction of the time. Plus, you don't have to physically do it. Push a button and it goes. Don't keep these time-saving tips for yourself. Go ahead and share this with someone that you think could benefit and help everyone turn hours to minutes in Excel. You'll see I've got a data file up. I have my sales data on this tab. We've got store, department, date, sales, and if it's a holiday or not. And then over here, I've got my store data. So for each store number, I know what city it's in, the type of store, A, B, or C, and the size or square footage. So what I need to do first is I'm going to want to be able to pull in, instead of looking at these dates, I'm going to want to be able to pull it in by year or month. So we're going to want to add columns for year and month. Then I'm going to want to pull in some of the store data. I'm going to want to pull in the store city, and I'm going to want to pull in the store type. I don't really need size at this point. To do that, we're going to record an easy macro that's going to copy every action I do. So every time you pull in a new data set, it will do the same thing. So now let's start recording our macro. On the developer tab, I'm going to click the record macro button. I'm going to call this macro the formatting macro. Make sure not to leave any spaces in your macro names, and we'll hit OK. And now Excel is going to copy everything I do and write code on the back end for us. The first thing we want to do is add in a year column. So we'll add in equals year, and we'll select the date. We'll let that copy all the way down, and we'll do the same thing for month. Again, in the background, Excel is recording every action I take, and it's going to repeat it for us with just the click of a button. Here's our month. It's the 5th month. And there you go. There's all of our months. Now what we want to do is pull in the data from our store data. There's a lot of advanced ways I can show you to do this, but again, this is for beginners, and I want to make sure we keep it very easy. So we're going to use VLOOKUP formulas to pull that in. So the first thing we want to pull in is the store city. We're always going to look up off of our store number, so that's going to be our lookup value. We're going to go select the table array. Very easy way to select the entire data set. Control Shift and then hit right and down, and I've selected the entire data set. We want to lock that and make it absolute by hitting the F4 key. And then we see the city name is in the second column, so we'll put a 2. And then it's not necessary, but I always put in false just to make sure we get an exact match. So there's our formula pulling in New York, New York. We'll copy that formula all the way down. And now we're going to do store type. And we'll do the exact same thing. We're just going to pull in a different one. So we'll come over here. We'll do store. We will again select all of our data. We'll lock that in. We know it's in the third column. And we'll hit false. And there we go. Store type A. And that's it. So now we're going to go up. We're going to hit stop recording macro. Our macro is successfully recorded, and we're going to save that script. And now, let's say you wanted to edit the code. You can just hit this edit code button. And here's all of the code that Excel automatically recorded. You don't need to do any of this. You can do all this with recording. I just wanted to show you that should you want to go back and adjust anything, or you wanted to get more into coding, all of it's here, all of it's editable. Excel was doing all the work for us on the back end. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide to get started using ChatGPT to write macros and automate your Excel. Here we go. So now we're going to open up ChatGPT. ChatGPT, you can get a free account by going to chatgpt.com. You will see that I have a pro account, but I'm not going to use any pro features. I'm going to use what is just free and available to you. It's very easy. All you have to do is talk to ChatGPT just like you would talk to a person. So I'm going to help you frame up a prompt. My favorite prompt for writing VBA or Python or anything will be located down in the description. Make sure to check it out. So here we go. First, you have to tell ChatGPT how you want it to behave. So I'll tell it, act as a VBA coding expert, because that's what I want, a VBA coding expert. I need your help to clean up and analyze a data set. Plain language, you've got to love it. Then we need to tell it where the data set is located. The data set is located at, we will go back and check our workbook. Looks like our data set goes from B2 to D23. We'll go back to ChatGPT, B2 to D23. The output should be a pivot table on a new worksheet. Remove any lines from the data set that are incomplete. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out any of those rows you saw that didn't have all of the data completed, because we can't really work with those. We're also going to take the information, put it in a pivot table on another sheet so we can manipulate it and adjust it from there. Now I'm going to tell it specifically what I want it to do. So write a VBA script to accomplish this task. We'll hit enter, and ChatGPT will do its magic. Very polite, sure, with an exclamation mark. You know it's excited. The great thing about doing code from ChatGPT is it will actually give you this window that you see. That's going to make it a lot cleaner to tell what's the code and what's ChatGPT talking with you. We'll give it a few seconds just to kind of keep putting its output. Want to make sure it's done. Also very helpful, just like I'm doing right now, ChatGPT is giving you the instructions to implement it. So we're going to copy the code now that it's done. We're going to go back to our Excel, and here you're going to want to open up Visual Basic, which is on the Developer tab. So we'll go to the Developer tab on the ribbon. We'll go to Visual Basic. Once we're in here, we're going to want to create a new module. A module is just what holds the content of a macro. We're going to paste this in. We're going to make sure that ChatGPT didn't leave us anything we need to clean up. So let's start at the top. We're going to make sure that the name, yep. So anything in green is a comment, and ChatGPT wanted us to put the name of our sheet in there. Our sheet is called Data. Let's see if there's any other instructions for us. I'm happy with the name pivot table sheet. No need to change. Okay, let's run this. All right, so ChatGPT has cleaned our data set. All the missing entries are gone now. That's really cool. It's also created this great pivot table over here. We can finish this up by popping the months into the columns. We'll put the sales into the values, and we'll put the sales reps on the side. And there is our table of all of our sales by sale reps. That is the power of ChatGPT, and you can do all of that automation in just seconds. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. I send it out every single Thursday with automation tips, just like you're learning today. The link's gonna be down in the description, and you really need to check it out. And we're gonna now build in a report where we'll use data validation and conditional formatting to clean everything up. So we're gonna call this the report tab. So the first thing I wanna do is I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna create a field for city. In this, I'm going to use data validation to create a drop-down because I want people to only be able to look up cities that are in the report. And it's not just about looking up the cities that are in the report, it's also about making sure that people don't type them incorrectly, don't misplace a comma or a period, that they pull it in exactly the way the report can find it. So we're going to come up here, we're going to go to data, we're going to go to data validation, and we're going to allow specific values, which will do a list. Now, you can type this in, but I much prefer to use a source. So I'm going to hit the button here. I'm going to go to store data, and my source is going to be this range right here of the cities that we know are in the report. I'll hit enter, and now you've got this really cool drop-down where you can select a specific city. So for starters, just so we know it's there, I'll hit New York, New York, and we'll widen that. Next, I want to pull in the departments. So that's what the store manager would look at kind of down the rows. And then I want to pull in the months across the top. All right, now that we've gotten 3 in, we can use autofill just to drag that all the way across. Autofill you could technically call a form of automation as well. We're going to just widen this a little bit so it's easier to see. There we go. And now we're going to pull in the departments. Now the departments are not numbered in any specific order, so there's a really good way to grab a list here. So I'm going to select the entire data set of departments. I'm going to paste that here. While it's still selected, I'm going to hit remove duplicates. This is my very fast way to get a list of just exactly what is unique. There's 81 unique values, so this will be the report of all the departments. So now we're ready to start pulling in the data. Now what I've noticed here, I actually neglected to pull in a year, so let's do that because we have 3 years in the data set. So we'll do year here. I'm going to go to data validation. I'm going to do a list, and we're just going to do 2010, 2011, and 2012 because we know it's pretty straightforward. So we'll say we want New York from 2012, which is the most recent year. So now we're going to pull in the data using simple sum-if formulas. This one's actually going to have 4 criteria, but it's a really easy way to pull in kind of this static fashion. Now, you could do this with a pivot table. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, but this is really about building kind of a canned static report. And also, I just really want to show you how data validation and conditional formatting work. So with that in mind, we'll do equals sum-if. The first thing we're going to do on our sales data page, we're going to come back to the top so we can see the headers. We're going to select the weekly sales, and then we're going to hit F4 again to make that absolute and lock it down. Now we're going to start putting in our criteria ranges. So we'll kind of start top to bottom to make it easier. On the top, the first thing we need is the store city. So we'll select that right here. Go back to the report. There's the city. Make it absolute. Then we're going to come over. We're going to get the year. We'll come back here. We'll make that absolute. Next, we're going to pull in the month, so that's located here. We'll lock that down. Now, when we come back, we actually want the month to change as we drag it across. You'll also see that because this is a report, I typed in the month name. Well, we're going to want to pull in the month number. So I'm going to reference right above January. I'm going to lock just the row. I'm not going to lock the column. And then lastly, we want to pull in our department. So we'll select B where department is, we'll lock that down. And then in a similar fashion, we want to lock the column here, but we don't want to lock the row. That's our formula. And of course, then I need to go back, as I mentioned, and add in the numbers. We'll be able to hide this row when we're done, but it will help enable our formula. Amazing. Now we're going to drag this across. We'll double click. And there's our report of sales by department. And then if you wanted to change this up here, you can do any of the drop downs. Let's say we'll flip over to Houston, Texas. The whole report updates. You want to come over here 2012 to 2011. The whole report updates. And that's the power of data validation, is that a user cannot misenter it, and you can create a dynamic report that updates automatically. So now what we want to look at is how we can use conditional formatting to enhance this report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire data here. All right, we're going to pop this over here. We're going to hit paste. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this first one as 2011. I'm going to do the second one as 2012. Then I'm going to come over and I'm going to create a grid of just the months and just the departments. So what we're doing is we're creating essentially a current year and a prior year. And then I'm simply going to do the variance between the two. So the new one minus the base. And here's the variance. Now you'll notice here that I locked it down so well that it actually didn't follow to the new one. So here's a really quick way that I can adjust for that. So I'm going to highlight the entire range. I know that previously I had city in C2, and now I want to move it to R2. So I will hit Control H, which brings up the replace window. I locked it down as $C, $2. Now we'll do $R, $2. And that's going to update our city. Next, we're going to update the year. So you'll see that that was previously in C3, and now we'll move it to R3. So we can quickly adjust this, C3, R3 will replace. Now it's referencing the new controls. Let that pop up there. We'll scroll over, and now we have all of our variances. And now I'm going to select the data set, and now this is a year-over-year comparison. So I'm going to highlight the entire data set, and then I'm going to go to conditional formatting. So you can find that on the Home tab under conditional formatting. We're going to go to highlight cell rules, and I want to look for larger variances. I don't want to look just at small ones. So we're going to say if it is a positive variance greater than 10,000, highlight it green. And if it's a negative variance, I care a little bit more about negative, so we're going to look at negative variances that are less than negative 5,000. We're going to do that light fill. And you'll see that there's actually a lot of underperformance here that we need to consider. So that's how you can use conditional formatting. I might honestly tweak this because the performance is so all over the place. You could tweak this so there's less. You don't want it to look like a Christmas tree, but that is the power of conditional formatting. And there's so many different options you can use in here in a very similar fashion to automate your formatting and help create these really nice canned reports for your management to look at. So now I promised you a bonus tip on how you can use a very quick method to forecast performance. And I'm going to show that to you now. This is something that I just recently learned and came across. And while it's a pretty high-level tool, it's an incredibly quick way to give yourself quick insights. So what you need to use this tool is you need a series of values that take place over a time period, and the time period needs to be consistent. This data set's perfect for that because we have a series of values that takes place across a month. So in this case, I'm going to use our 2012 data, which is most recent, and I'm looking at Houston, Texas. So let's say that I'm the store manager and I want to understand how Department 1 might perform going forward because we've been having some challenging performance and we want to be able to start working to fix that. So I'm going to highlight this data set. You'll see I'm going to highlight the months and then I'm going to highlight the first row, which is Department 1, and you can do this on any of the individual departments. I'm going to come up here on the Data tab and click this Forecast Sheet button. And with just a click of a button, Excel is going to automatically create a forecast for me. You'll see the orange line in the middle is the forecast itself. Then it gives you the lower confidence bound and the upper confidence bound. Now, clearly it's not going to go negative, that's statistics. So one thing we can look at is, do we want to adjust the confidence interval? Excel will automatically set the forecast confidence at 95%. That means that there's a 95% probability it will be within here. But again, we want to tighten that because we know it's not going to necessarily be this low. And for our case as a store manager, 80-20 rule, 80% is just fine. And now we have this forecast trend right here, all done for you automatically. You can look at it in a line chart. You can also look at it in a bar chart, and it's a really quick way to extrapolate the historical data and understand the performance. You'll even see that it very closely mirrors the recent performance because it's pulling in everything and then it's looking at the more recent data as more relevant, which is weighting your forecast down. An incredibly powerful tool for you to use to quickly look at a forecast. Again, there's fancier ways to do everything that I've showed you, but these are the basics. These are my easy techniques that anyone can apply today. If you take away just one thing from this video, I want you to understand that automation is easy. It does not require manual coding. It does not require expensive software. You can do it with things built into your computer, and it just takes a little bit of setup time, but will save you hours on the back end. Stop putting it off and start today. That's it for today. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, this is Mike signing off from F9 Finance. Cheers.